COVID has obviously impacted everyone. I hope you and your family are doing well. I hope everyone's okay. But I was also wondering, how has it changed the way you're able to broadcast a baseball game?
Well, Jeremy, it's changed the world for everyone, and it certainly has impacted the way we do things, broadcasting baseball. As you may or may not know, last year, Dan Shulman and I did all 60 games from a studio in Toronto at One Mount Pleasant at Sportsnet Studios. And that was pretty good considering we were both in the same room. We had all the technology available to see all of the pictures at the field wherever the Blue Jays were playing. So that actually worked pretty well. And in fact, there were only four of us in the studio at the same time. So the control room was on another floor, and we were in an air conditioned studio. So basically, it was pretty good. The only thing that we miss, well, not the only thing, but the most important thing that impacts my broadcasting is the inability to chat with the players and coaches on a regular basis. And, my time before a game is most important down on the field at the batting cage, talking to both the Blue Jays as the visiting team, their opponents. And that's when I get most of my information. So that's been a real challenge.
And this year, will you be? I'm sorry. So this year, will you be traveling with the team, or it's all being remotely as well?
Well, what we're going to do is Pat Tabler and I will work the first home games in Dunedin. The Blue Jays are planning to play the first two series in Dunedin, and then they will go on the road and play. Then, when they're on the road, Dan Shulman will be in Toronto at One Mount Pleasant at Sportsnet, and I will be in my house in Newport Richey, Florida. So that'll be a challenge for sure, since we're not going to be in the same room. But as I mentioned, the first two home stands for the Blue Jays will be played in Dunedin, and Pat and I will be on site at the ballpark.
Um, what's your early assessment of this year's Blue Jays team?
Well, I think they're going to be pretty good. Obviously, they got to the playoffs last year in the shortened season, and the addition of George Springer and Marcus Simeon, they traded for Steven Matz, and I think everybody's pretty upbeat about it. But they still have a ways to go. They were just a couple of games over 500 last year, and the New York Yankees are always going to be the New York Yankees, and they've beefed up their rotation a little bit. So Tampa Bay, as much as they've lost a couple of key players in Blake Snell and Charlie Morton, they have a way of figuring things out. And I think they'll be formidable again this year. And also the Boston Red Sox. Everybody wants to write off the Boston Red Sox, but Alex Cora is back in the dugout for them after a year's suspension, and I think they're going to be very competitive as well. So once again, looks like a very challenging division.
Well, you're a player, a former manager, you're now an analyst. What are you looking for when determining how competitive a team can be that maybe the average fan isn't seeing?
Well, I look for a team, how motivated they are as a team, not so much how the individuals are doing, but are the players sacrificing themselves for the betterment of the team? And that's when you have a championship caliber ball club. And I think the Blue Jays have a foundation of that because several of their players are homegrown players. And those young players won in the minor leagues. So they appreciate what it means to win as a team. And I think that's where their focus is. They want to be a winning ball club. And I think when you ask Kevin Biggio or Bo Bichette or Vladdy Guerrero, what do you want to accomplish? They want to win a World Series and bring that title back to Canada.
Um, it's still a young club, but are you seeing any maturity in their play this spring that you might attribute to last year's playoff experience?
Absolutely. That's such a great point. I think because they did get to the playoffs and, they had a disappointing run. They lost both games of the wild card series to Tampa Bay. And, first and foremost, Bo Bichette was very disappointed. He had a rough game in game two, committing a couple of errors in the first inning. And I think that served as motivation for him to really focus in the off season and get better. He's in remarkable shape. He's really focused on playing better in the field. And I think I see it with Vladdy as well. Vladdy's a fun loving kid. He just turned 22 and he is a kid. But this season, I sense more of a professional approach, a little more Vladdy focused in batting practice, and Kevin Biggio the same way. So I think you're right. That experience last year ended up as a disappointment. They accomplished a lot by getting there for the first time as a group, but I think they were all disappointed in the way it finished.
They just picked up his option, Charlie Montoyo. What do you think about him as a manager? Is there anything in particular that you like about his approach to the game?
Well, Charlie Montoya has managed for 18 years in the minor leagues, and he's always been involved in player development. And in this day and age in the major leagues, you're continuing to develop players, even though they're big league players. There's a lot of finishing work done in the major leagues. And I think Charlie Montoyo is a terrific communicator. He allows the players to be themselves while at the same time, he lets them know what he expects from them to an individual. I mean, he's such a great communicator. As I mentioned, that he goes around to the individuals. He'll tell them what he expects of them. He'll tell them when they're playing, where they're playing, what positions they're playing, where they're batting in the order. And he'll do that a day or two ahead of time. So there are no surprises when the kids come to the ballpark. Charlie has set them up for success. And I think he's a perfect manager for this young team.
Um, the Jays made some splashes in free agency, and actually in each of the last 2 years with the Ryu, Springer, and Simeon, with a roster of exciting young players. Do you think Toronto is now becoming a desirable destination for some top talent?
Well, it's getting close, that's for sure. Jeremy, in the late 80s, early 90s, Toronto was truly a destination for free agents. And that was played out with Jack Morris coming here as a free agent, Dave Stewart, Dave Winfield, Paul Molitor, all of those star players ended up playing in Toronto because it was the place to play. And I think those players that have experienced baseball in Toronto understand when the Blue Jays are good, the whole country is behind you. And I think that's the goal of this organization right now is get back to that status, be a contending team year in and year out. And once this COVID is behind us, to fill Rogers Stadium with the best fans in baseball.
It's really exciting when you get a great player like Springer, but beyond his ability on the field, what effect do you think a playoff tested veteran like Springer or Simeon, will have on a young team like ours?
Well, he kind of validates what the Blue Jays are trying to accomplish. And, when you sign a new player and he comes into your clubhouse like Springer and Simeon as well, they both have playoff experience. And I heard it several times last year from the young Blue Jay players. They kind of said, hey, we need a grown up in the locker room. We need somebody that has been there before to help us finalize how we get back to the postseason. And I think Springer and Simeon are the perfect people for that. They're good players. They have both enjoyed a lot of success on the field, but they've also played in the playoffs, and they're both great people. When you come into the atmosphere that the Blue Jays have created and you bring in two more character personalities like Springer and Simeon, I think you're just adding to an already good clubhouse.
But infield depth wasn't really a weakness on this team. Did you like the Simeon signing, or maybe should we have thought about pitching strength?
You know what? I like the Simeon signing, and the defense didn't have a good year last year. And I know Simeon's a shortstop playing second, but that's a bonus when you have athletic people like that can move around the diamond. You'll get the versatility of a shortstop playing at a new position at second base. That should improve the infield defense. I also like the fact that with Simeon at second, you can put Kevin Biggio over at third, and he's looked great so far this spring. Plus, now you bring in Springer into center, and you've improved your defense up the middle. That's always been a big concern in baseball going back to the early years. So I think, yeah, it would have been nice to add another pitcher. I'm sure they tried to make a run at Trevor Bauer and some of the other pitchers that were on the market. But so far, so good with the pitching staff. And I think Simeon's going to have a good impact on this team.
We have now four pretty good quality outfielders. How do you, as putting on your managerial hat, how do you keep them all engaged over the course of the season and make sure they're a part of the team?
Well, that's a real challenge. And I've said this many times. I don't think any manager complains about having too many good players, but he'll have to figure out how to rotate those players and keep everybody involved. And you're right. It's about keeping them engaged, making everybody understand that they're part of this effort. It's going to take 26, 30, 32 players over the course of a season to win a championship. And everybody has to have a part. Everybody has to deliver their role. And I think Randall Grichuk understands that. Teoscar had a great year last year. Springer's going to play every day. He's going to rotate, play center most of the time, maybe a little in right. Gurriel has been a good hitter the last couple of years. So it's imperative that you keep those guys engaged, involved. And now you've got the challenge of mixing in Vladdy Guerrero and Rowdy Velez at first base as well. So like I said, I don't think anybody ever complains about having too many good players. It's just a matter of how you keep them active and how you keep them sharp without an awful lot of playing time.
The injury to Pearson is disappointing. Are you comfortable with our starting rotation in his absence?
Well, Pearson's injury is a leg injury and not an arm injury. I guess that's a blessing in disguise. And he's a big, strong kid. So I expect that he will be back at some point. But I don't think you can just snap your fingers and say he's going to be back in the middle of April. It might be a little later than that. But so far, the pitching has been pretty good. The depth has been fine with Robbie Ray throwing the ball well, Steven Matz throwing the ball well. Russ Stripling has thrown the ball so far so good this spring. Anthony Kay and TJ Zoik are throwing the ball very well, and they're in the competition to round out the rotation. So I think internally there are enough options for Charlie Montoya early in the season. Hopefully, we'll keep our fingers crossed that Nate Pearson can come back along with Thomas Hatch, who's also enjoying some downtime right now. I mean, he's not enjoying it, but it's an elbow issue that has him on the shelf too.
Um, we're playing away for now the second year in a row. Does not having a home team a home field, is this a real disadvantage to our team?
It is a disadvantage. There's no question about it. And last year, I thought the Blue Jays did a tremendous job. Initially, everybody thought they might play in Toronto. There was that talk. They had the summer camp at Rogers Center, and it was looking like, hey, we might just play here for the regular season. That didn't happen. Then they thought they were going to play in Pittsburgh. That didn't happen. Maybe Baltimore. Well, that didn't happen. They ended up in Buffalo. But to a man, you never heard them complaining, and they just stuck together. And I think it was really a team building experience for the entire organization. So, yeah, they'd love to be at Rogers Center. There's no question about that. That's their home, and that's where they want to play, and they want to play in front of fans. But we know that can't happen right now. So they'll start the season in Dunedin, and after a couple of series, we're not really sure where they're going to end up, but we keep our fingers crossed that before too long, it'll be back at Rogers Center.
Do you like how the league has handled COVID? Are you satisfied with the program they've put in place?
Yeah, I think they've done a great job. I live in Florida, and I think the governor of Florida has done a remarkable job. And you look at the spring training parks, there are limited fans in the stands. Everybody's enjoying baseball once again, and life is getting closer to normal down here for sure. And we hope that'll happen soon in Canada and in Toronto, especially.
So last question, how far can the Jays go in 2021?
Well, I think health will have a lot to do with it. And of course, with Kirby Yates getting injured late in spring training and Nate Pearson battling that injury, you're always going to test your depth. But I think the team is motivated to win. They would be disappointed if they didn't get back to the playoffs this year, and they have high expectations. It might be a little bit early in the run for this young group, but I wouldn't put anything past them. I think they're very motivated. And now with the additions, as we've talked about, I think this team has as good a chance as any in the American League East to go into the playoffs.
Well, that's great. Buck, I honestly, I can't thank you enough for your time. I'm a 47-year-old man. I grew up in Toronto with the Blue Jays. You're a big part of my youth, you and your ball teammates. And so thank you for that. And thank you for taking the time to be with us. Good luck with the season.
Thank you, Jeremy. Pleasure to be with you.
Thank you.